खुशामदीद एंड वेलकम बैक नाज़रीन। पहले हाफ में हम डिस्कस कर रहे थे कॉरोनरी हार्ट डिजीज़ और इसमें हमने डिस्कस किया हार्ट अटैक्स और स्ट्रोक्स और एंजाइना, और इस सेकंड हाफ में हम डिस्कस करेंगे कोलेस्ट्रॉल। Chloe, first half we talked about coronary heart disease. Another very closely linked topic is cholesterol. Can you tell me a bit about cholesterol? I mean, I was reading some of the statistics around cholesterol in terms of in relation to cancer, and cholesterol is much higher and can be responsible for more deaths.
Cholesterol is absolutely linked to CHD, and it's one of the most important things we need to work hard to control to reduce the risk of CHD and improve our overall health. Cholesterol is actually really important in the body. Essentially transports fat around the body. There's two different sorts. There's good cholesterol and then there's bad cholesterol.
Okay, so cholesterol is actually something in our body. It's not a medical term for something.
No, cholesterol is something that's in our body.
Okay.
Like I say, it's a fatty substance that's actually when it's combined with a protein in our body, and that helps to transport the fat around
the body. And there's good and bad.
There's good and there's bad. Yeah.
Okay.
So the good cholesterol helps to take the fat away from the arteries. To the liver, and then it's removed from the body. The bad cholesterol does the opposite. It actually takes the fat from our digestive system, from our liver, and actually transports it to our arteries, increasing those fatty deposits that I talked about, increasing CHD risk, and therefore increasing the risk of heart attack, angina and stroke.
Okay, so what causes high cholesterol?
Cholesterol is influenced mainly by our diet, okay? So when our diet is higher in saturated fat, that actually increases the bad cholesterol in our body and reduces the good cholesterol in our body. And this is when those fatty deposits are more likely to accumulate.
Okay, so actually it's directly linked to diet, because one of my questions, which you've already answered, was going to be, so if there's good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, how is it that some people then end up with more bad cholesterol than good? Because it's that link with diet.
Absolutely, it's that if we have a high intake of saturated fat in our diet, which is found in animal fats, so things like butter, ghee, full fat milk, cheese, that's where we find saturated fat, and if we're having high levels of those foods in our diet, we are more likely to have more of this bad cholesterol, which causes those fatty deposits.
And some of those foods again were ghee?
Like I say, ghee, butter, lard, kind of, visible fat on meat, that as well, also full fat milk and cheese.
So in terms of alternatives, for anybody that's watching out there that may be taking full fat milk or having butter or ghee, do we know what they could do in terms of alternatives?
So alternatives, olive oil is a very good alternative.
Olive oil.
Rapeseed oil, pure vegetable oil. The reason for that is that they're better fats, which will help to reduce that bad cholesterol, and also some of those will help to push up our good cholesterol, so improving our overall what we'd call cholesterol ratios.
Okay, so we can actually improve our cholesterol in terms of the good cholesterol, bump that up a little bit.
We can do by including those good fats that I talked about, so things like olive oils, rapeseed oils, pure vegetable oils.
And in terms of milk, would it be semi-skimmed, skimmed milk?
Absolutely. Semi-skimmed, skimmed milk we recommend. The calcium content is just as good, if not better, in lower milks with lower fat content.
Okay. One of the things, Chloe, I wanted to ask was, in terms of what you're suggesting in dietary requirements in terms of olive oil, etc., is there any certain age that people should be more cautious, or should it be actually right from when you're a child, just as a standard way of healthy eating, that we should be avoiding things like ghee, etc., and full fat milk?
Absolutely. So starting these changes early on in life, they're just as nutritious, if not better for you. And when we get used to something earlier on in life, we're more likely to then continue those changes for long term, improving our overall health.
In terms of cholesterol, is there any links between cholesterol and diabetes? I know in the first half of the program you mentioned that if you have diabetes, it may also increase your risk. Is that the same for cholesterol? Or could you tell me a bit about it?
Yeah, so similarly, excuse me if I repeat myself slightly, our diabetes risk is greater when we're carrying more weight. And when we're carrying more weight, our cholesterol is more likely to be higher as well. So there's that relationship there to consider. And as I mentioned previously, when our diabetes control isn't as good as it should be, we've got high levels of glucose in our blood, and that will in turn increase the risk of these fatty deposits being formed from having higher bad cholesterol in our body.
Now, if we've got any viewers that are watching out there that maybe have cholesterol, is it worth, you've already mentioned in terms of how they can reduce their cholesterol, in terms of some of the dietary things that they can change. By reducing their cholesterol, are they lowering their risk of heart attack and things like angina and stroke? Is that being lowered?
Absolutely. When we lower our overall cholesterol, we will also reduce that bad cholesterol I talked about, and it's when we're reducing that bad cholesterol that is reducing the chances of these fatty buildups in our arteries which cause heart attack and stroke. So if we're reducing the fatty deposits, we will reduce the chances of CHD from happening.
Okay. And so there's a direct link there. So anybody out there that's watching it, as soon as this program, as soon as you begin to reduce your cholesterol, you're actually lowering your risk of heart attack,
100%.
things like angina and stroke, etc. Karen, one of the other things I wanted to ask was, sometimes when I'm shopping in the supermarket, etc., I see yogurts or sometimes drinks that have the word cholesterol, etc. in it. So does that mean that food actually has cholesterol in it as well? Can you tell me a bit about that, or is that not the same thing?
It's quite different actually, yeah. It's said that things like eggs, liver, kidney, shellfish contain cholesterol, and yes, they do contain cholesterol,
right?
But it's not the cholesterol in food that affects the cholesterol levels in our body.
Right, it isn't?
No, no. It's the type of fat that we're eating, so like I said, the saturated fat, the bad fat, versus the unsaturated fats, the good fats that we're eating.
Okay, so if we're eating foods like fish, etc., and those that you've mentioned, it doesn't mean that we're adding to the cholesterol in our body?
No, eggs are actually a very good lean source of protein to include, and if an individual likes eggs, I would suggest they continue to eat eggs.
Okay.
There's a lot of outdated evidence now around eating eggs that used to be considered not beneficial for heart health, but a lot more research that has been done more recently now suggests that it's not the cholesterol in our food that affects the cholesterol in our body, it's actually the type of fat in our food that affects the cholesterol in our body.
And earlier on in the conversation you mentioned things like visible fat. So I suppose one of the things that came to mind was meat.
Yes.
So often when you're cooking meat you can actually see the fat. What would your recommendations be around that?
So with meat, if you can see any visible white bits, any visible fat, cut it off first before you cook it, because if we cook it first and try to drain the fat off, yes, we'll drain some of the fat off, but a lot of it will get absorbed into the meat during the cooking process. So if you cut off any visible fat first, that way you're going to reduce the overall saturated fat content of that meal.
So we've spoken about some of the dietary changes that we can make in terms of lowering, in order to lower cholesterol. Can you tell me about some lifestyle changes that may also help in terms of lowering cholesterol?
Lifestyle changes, the big one that we talked about before, weight. Yeah, weight again,
factor.
Massive factor. If we can work to keep our weight as healthy as possible, that will help to reduce our cholesterol significantly. It can reduce our cholesterol by up to 15%. So working to make small lifestyle changes to reduce our calorie consumption, combined with that 20 minutes of physical activity a day that I talked about, that can help to control our weight and therefore reduce our risk of high cholesterol as well.
Okay, so that's absolutely fantastic, just to learn that just by doing that 20 minutes of exercise and being that healthy weight, 15% you're 15% less likely.
Like I say, a 10% reduction in our body weight can reduce our overall cholesterol by 15%. 15%.
In terms of the national health checks that are happening, how can people access those, and what are those all about? Can you tell me a bit about those?
The health checks, you can now pop along to your GP and request them if it's something that's a particular concern to you. But actually now all of those that are over the age 40 do get invited along to their GP surgery to have that completed.
Alright, so if you're 40 years old, regardless of where you live in the country, if you're male or female, whatever ethnicity, gender, you will get an appointment from your GP.
Absolutely, and what they're checking for there, they check for your cholesterol levels, as we've talked about, they check for your blood pressure, and they also calculate as to where you sit in respect to how healthy your weight is. And quite often, when you know where the concerns lie, we can then think about moving things forwards to change things for the better.
And for all those people that get that invitation, why is it so important that people actually turn up to the appointment, even if they're feeling fit and healthy, or they feel that their body weight's absolutely no problem?
Because these are things that we can't see. We can't see our cholesterol, we can't see our blood pressure, and we can't see whether we've got diabetes or not. It's something that's inside. So even if we're feeling absolutely fine, it's still important to really pop along and get that checked out, just to be thorough and just to be sure.
Right. So Chloe, would you say that what's most important if there was an order of doing things, or is it all as important as each other? So is it that you need to control your cholesterol first in order to lower your risk of heart attack and stroke and suffering from angina, or is it right from the beginning you should be exercising healthy and dieting and all those kind of things?
Difficult question. I don't think I could put an order of priority on it. I think it's important to take everything into consideration, be aware of all the information, and thinking about kind of small realistic changes you can set for yourself, so you can achieve this and you can then maintain it for the long term. So whether it be you choose it easier to work on reducing your saturated fat, or whether you choose it easier to increase your physical activity, tackling one thing at a time, slowly chipping away at it, is probably the best approach to take.
And but I suppose the most important is that all of those, by looking after all those aspects in terms of stopping smoking, increasing your physical exercise, by looking after the diet and the fats that go into your body, they will all have an impact on coronary heart disease.
Absolutely, they're all key factors. So like I say, chipping through it slowly, at a pace that you're comfortable with, is the best approach to take, starting with the easiest changes you think you can make.
So we've spoke quite a lot about the importance of reducing saturated fat and things like butter and ghee and oils, etc. Is there anything else that people can do?
Yeah, there's quite a few different things. Another important thing is salt intake. So keeping our salt intake as low as we can, as salt has a direct influence on our blood pressure. Right. So if we have a higher salt intake, we're more likely to have a higher blood pressure. So that's one further diet change I would definitely recommend.
And that could just be reducing salt, so by a little bit and making small changes?
So just using a little bit in our cooking rather than a lot, not adding it at the table, and using more kind of garlic, onion, spices to flavour our foods instead. Absolutely. On top of that, there's then fruit and vegetables. So making sure we're getting our 5 a day, as the fruit and vegetable contains loads of fibre, which helps to reduce our cholesterol as well.
And 5 a day is just a minimum, isn't it? If people want to take more, that's even better.
Yeah, if people think they can have more than 5 a day, absolutely. We've then got omega-3s, okay? So omega-3s are found in our oily fish. So things like sardines, mackerel, salmon, fresh tuna, including 2 portions of omega-3 containing fish a week can also have a beneficial impact on our cholesterol.
So 2 portions of only fish a week can have beneficial
Absolutely.
in actually reducing
in reducing our cholesterol. Other things to consider, there's also nuts. Nuts are high in calories, so we wouldn't recommend eating lots of nuts, but a small handful a day as a healthy snack can also help to have beneficial impact on our cholesterol. And further things to consider on top of that, there's opting for whole grain foods, so over white flour, using whole grain flour to make chapati. The fibre content there will help with our cholesterol too, in addition to including things like oats and soya products as well can be quite useful.
So all these are kind of the goodie foods in terms of helping reduce cholesterol.
So doing all of this will give you that extra boost to improve your overall cholesterol. As I say, reducing your saturated fat is the biggest, that's the top priority, but doing all of these little things as well will all have beneficial impact as well too.
So any viewers that are listening out there, they could pick up on 2 or 3 of those and as a start make a start on 2 or 3 of those, maybe a handful of nuts, etc., some omega-3 products, or fish once a week or twice a week.
Yes, absolutely. So focusing on reducing your saturated fat, that's the most important, and picking up on a couple of those if that's something that would be of interest to you, would definitely have that additional benefit.
Chloe, we're nearly at the end of our programme. Is there any final messages you want to leave with our viewers in terms of everything from coronary heart disease, heart attacks and cholesterol? Is there any final messages that you want to leave them? Any points of actions that you want to leave with them? Anything that they should do?
Okay, so probably the most important things you can do is think about everything that we've talked today. Think about modifying your weight to keep it as healthy as possible, even that 10% reduction that we talked about. Second of all, reducing the saturated fat that we're eating. In addition to that, increasing our physical activity where possible, and fundamentally stopping smoking as well. If we can work on all these factors that we can change, it will reduce our overall risk of CHD.
नाज़रीन, ये थी हमारे आज के स्टूडियो के गेस्ट क्लोई एडम्स, जो कम्युनिटी डाइटिशियन है, और इन्होंने सेकंड हाफ ऑफ द प्रोग्राम में हमें बताया कोलेस्ट्रॉल के बारे में, और ये बताया कि कोलेस्ट्रॉल को कंट्रोल करना कितना इम्पोर्टेंट है, क्योंकि अगर हमारा कोलेस्ट्रॉल कंट्रोल हो जाए तो हमारी रिस्क ऑफ हार्ट अटैक, स्ट्रोक और एंजाइना बहुत कम हो जाती है। इन्होंने हमें एक्सप्लेन किया कि हर बंदे के बॉडी के अंदर गुड और बैड कोलेस्ट्रॉल होता है, और इम्पोर्टेंट है कि हम उस गुड कोलेस्ट्रॉल को रखें और जो बैड कोलेस्ट्रॉल है वो हमारी बॉडी से जाता जाए। इन्होंने एक्सप्लेन किया कि कोलेस्ट्रॉल के ज्यादा होने की क्या वजह है, यानी कि अगर हम घी ले रहे हैं, कुछ ऑयल्स ले रहे हैं, जो बटर की वजह से हो सकता है, जो हमारे मीट में चर्बी होती है उनकी वजह से कोलेस्ट्रॉल ज्यादा हो जाता है। सो हमें देखना चाहिए कि हम मे बी किन चीज़ें कौन सी चीज़ें रिप्लेस कर सकते हैं। फॉर एग्जांपल, हम ऑयल को रिप्लेस कर सकते हैं ऑलिव ऑयल के साथ, जो ज़्यादा हेल्थी है, वेजिटेबल ऑयल के साथ हम रिप्लेस कर सकते हैं। अगर हम फुल फैट मिल्क पीते हैं, जो फुली पास्चराइज्ड मिल्क है, हम उसको रिप्लेस कर सकते हैं सेमी स्किम मिल्क से या स्किम मिल्क से। जो सेमी स्किम मिल्क है वो ग्रीन टॉप वाली दूध होता है, और जो स्किम्ड मिल्क है वो रेड टॉप वाला होता है। उसको हम अगर फुल फैट मिल्क को अपने डाइट से बाहर निकाल दे, फिर भी हमारा कोलेस्ट्रॉल कम हो सकता है, क्योंकि उसमें भी फैट्स होते हैं। इन्होंने एक्सप्लेन किया कि डाइट बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, और उसके साथ ही साथ फिजिकल एक्सरसाइज। अगर हमारा वेट ठीक होगा, हमारा वेट ज्यादा नहीं होगा, ऑटोमेटिकली हमारी कोलेस्ट्रॉल भी कम होगी, और हमारे हार्ट अटैक, स्ट्रोक और एंजाइना के रिस्क भी बहुत कम हो जाएंगे। इन्होंने ये भी बताया कि जो कोलेस्ट्रॉल और डायबिटीज का लिंक भी हो सकता है, इसीलिए डायबिटीज़ को अच्छे खाने, अच्छे डाइट से, अच्छी एक्सरसाइज से वज़न अपने बॉडी वेट के मुताबिक रखना बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है। ये था हमारा आज का प्रोग्राम जिसमें हमने डिस्कस किया अंजाइना, कॉर्नी हार्ट डिजीज़, हार्ट अटैक, स्ट्रोक और कोलेस्ट्रॉल के बारे में। आपको याद दिलाती चाहूँ कि आप हमें ईमेल कर सकते हैं at healthmatters@the.tv। अगर आप कोई ऐसा सब्जेक्ट हमारे शो में देखना चाहते हैं, कोई ऐसी टॉपिक जिसके बारे में आप जानना चाहते हैं, या आप अपनी फैमिली के बारे में पूछना चाहते हैं कि अगर कोई भी टॉपिक उनकी इंटरेस्ट की हो तो हम आपके लिए वो टॉपिक लेके आ सकते हैं बर्मिंघम सिटी काउंसिल की तरफ से। आप हमें ईमेल जरूर कीजिए at healthmatters@the.tv। इस हफ्ते के लिए नसरीन आपसे लेती है इजाजत। अल्लाह हाफिज।